Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, to secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everyone, welcome to Night Vision. So glad you could join us wherever you are or whatever time you're watching us. We're live every Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you can figure that out for your time zone, catch us live if you can. If not, hopefully you can catch us on the recorded version. But today we have a really interesting topic to cover. I know a lot of people are interested in this ancient archaeological site. Now I'm talking about Gobekli Tepe in Turkey, which is, or very well may be, the oldest known temple in the world. What we're going to be discussing today is some elements of that archaeological find, which obviously is still ongoing. There's only been a very small portion of it that's been excavated so far. I understand that there's some other nearby sites that might even be older than Gobekli Tepe. So we'll go into some of that. But also we're going to be talking about this big cataclysmic event that occurred back 12,000 years ago and caused, or what may have caused, a huge climate event, climate change. Now, that's kind of a controversial concept. Not everyone adheres to it, but it seems like it's gaining more and more credibility. So without further ado, I'll bring on James, our historian, who you all know, James Martin. And also with us tonight is Sean Halsall. And he is a British politician, and he's definitely been doing some work as of late in the area and doing some research into climate change and how what happened, those many thousands of years ago, could be trumpeting what may be occurring even now as we sit here. So, hello, James.
Hello, everyone. It's been a while. I think it's been about a month, hasn't it? Something like that. Unless you're listening to a recorded version, in which case, hello again. If you're watching, in which case. But in the real world, it's been about a month, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it has. Now, Sean, glad you're back with us again, and I'm interested to see what you have to offer in terms of the climate aspects or anything else you want to jump in on, by the way. But I think maybe we might start, James. First of all, we're talking about this old archaeological site, this old temple site, and we are examining this event that occurred, which was a comet or a series of comets hitting the Earth. Now, and just to clear it up for me, and hopefully, for some of my audience members, this time is referred to as Younger Dryas. Can you explain why it's called that, and what is Younger Dryas?
Well, Younger Dryas is the name of a strange event that has been known about for quite some time. In a nutshell, it's a notable change in the climate. It might sound strange what I'm about to say, but it's a time where the ice sheet of Greenland, as we still have it today, just about, covered and extended through most of Canada and North America. And essentially, it's the massive and very quick retreat of that ice sheet, this Greenland ice sheet, as I say, still remnant with us today, just about. And it's the impact that that melting and that retreat had. Perversely, though, even though the sheet melted, it also led to a cooling event as well. So I just want to try and steer clear away from the weather aspect, but essentially, and in a nutshell, that's what we're referring to when we're referring to Younger Dryas. And again, Younger Dryas is simply down to the name of the people who've proposed this. That's all. That's where we get its.
So there's no older Dryas.
Well,
there's no middle child Dryas.
There's not really, no. I mean, the word younger does refer to, I suppose, a period of drying, I guess you would say. But it, again, is more named after the event of retreat and all of this, rather than, it's you've got an older Dryas and all of this. Some people might refer to a prenatal Dryas or something like that. Not language that I've heard before, though.
But what is Dryas?
It literally comes from a drying period. So the reason it's named after this, from memory, this was named after, the event was named after, I think, a Danish research team who had discovered some very strange things to do with pollen in ice cores. And they have named it such. Essentially, drying period, a period without much rain.
Right. Now, I know, you're planning a trip to Gobekli Tepe. Hopefully, by the time you actually go, maybe I can get over there and go as well. But what is it that Gobekli Tepe is one of those things that you hear about, I've heard of, but I haven't gotten got into a lot of research into it. I think I've done one show on it, and that was several years ago with Robert Schoch, who's the geologist who was at that time spending a lot of time at Gobekli Tepe, and that's about it. But what do you see as the biggest significance of that site? Is it the fact that it's so old? Is it a religious element? What is it that is the big draw to Gobekli Tepe?
I think it's age, and I think it was Robert Schoch and Professor Klaus Schmidt from Germany who actually, I can just hear them contradicting my previous statement of there was an older Dryas. The problem with it is dating. To be fair, it's the dating, but we'll just stick with young Dryas. Why is Gobekli Tepe's so interesting? Because in history, when anyone who's been a student of history, whether they've been to college or university, will have come across at some point the academic argument, which has been sustained since the Victorian period, that there was a fertile crescent. Humanity left Africa. They were hunter-gatherers at a time of great scarcity, and there was a fertile crescent in the Middle East. So today's Lebanon, right the way down to, say, Iraq, or what was called Mesopotamia. And that particular event, or that particular fertile crescent, is dated to around about 6,000 years ago. And we certainly see humans begin to cultivate different types of grasses for consumption. And, it is true that cities and towns could sustain themselves on the surplus of that agricultural revolution, as it's also called. The problem is when you see sites like Novella Cori, Tetlhoyuk, and Gobekli Tepe, is these sites predate the Fertile Crescent, the agricultural revolution, if you will, by some thousands of years. So Gobekli Tepe is around about, construction periods are, again, a little bit difficult, but they're around about 11,000 BC to 9,000 BC within that frame. And it is truly remarkable. I mean, I'll show you some images for those who are watching the show. But this is not indicative of a hunter-gatherer society. For example, if you are starving, you are hungry, the last thing you're going to do is, I know we need to go and build a load of totems in the middle of some land somewhere. So it sort of put a little bit of a spanner in the works of the traditional view that we only became, quote, civilized. Civilized just means city dweller. That we become civilized because we learned how to farm or farm grasses and wheat and things like this. This period isn't well understood. No one left a history book. It's a period of communal surplus. There's an idea that surpluses may have been exchanged, things like this, but it's not really well understood. The notion of hunter-gatherer is often seen as being somewhat primitive. These people had a very advanced culture, and I have to say, like humans, Homo sapien that have come before us, they think like us. So if you're hungry, you're probably not thinking of constructing a major temple complex. You are more likely to focus on the relieving your hunger. So we can sort of extract from this that there was certainly subsistence, and probably more so.
So what you're indicating there is that there was a functional society, and we're talking about what some people call the pre-pottery age, where they had not started to make pottery or things like that, and the utensils and other things, bowls, whatever, that they made were actually just hewn out of rock. But there have been some amazing pieces that have been found there. So certainly they don't look super primitive. Some of these pieces are amazingly well preserved.
Incredibly advanced, I would suggest. And the concentration of these advanced lithic sites, these stone sites, within the region of today's Turkey, for example, Gobekli Tepe is in nearby Urfa or Sanliurfa. In southern Turkey, there's a large concentration of these sites. Another argument, just to throw into the mix, is the discovery of sites like this has also put into question even perhaps the age of things like the Sphinx. Was the Sphinx constructed by these people who constructed Gobekli Tepe in this way? And they are in a world that, if you could see the world map, would look very different. Ice, sea levels are lower, and ice is covering most of Europe and North America. And again, for those who are watching the show and can see this image, imagine essentially that the Black Sea is sealed off from the Mediterranean. Britain is a peninsula off of the northwestern coast of Europe. Most of northern Britain, for example, is covered under a quite a thick ice sheet. So really, the places that you could cultivate a society, if you will, is within the so-called Fertile Crescent. But I think we need to somewhat push that back. And we open the show with the younger Dryas. I'm quite happy to be corrected on the older Dryas, although I just stick with the younger one because of the effect that it had. You can see from the following graph that something drastically changed within the Earth's climate. And for many years, this has been debated. What was it that changed? What caused it? And it would appear that two bolides, and what I mean by that is comet, asteroid, airbursted. So it didn't hit the ground, but they detonated. They came into the Earth's atmosphere, probably fractured, and then burst above the ice sheet in Canada. And the image that's just up on there, you can see the extent of the damage that particular bolide had in terms of the amount of debris that was scattered around the Earth. Don't think of this as being something new. We know that bolides have airbursted in some more famous examples, perhaps like Tunguska. There was no impact, but a burst above the ground. And again, just a few years ago, all over YouTube and Twitter and all of this was another airburst that caused quite a lot of damage in a city in Russia. I forget the name. What happened after these bolides airbursted was a rapid melting. Now, it could be the case that the ice sheet in Canada that extended all the way around to Europe and bits of northern United States was already melting. This certainly assisted along the way. And it's believed that a lot of cold, fresh water ended up in the global ocean in as little as 5 months to 5 years. So this was a major event and a major melting event too. So when we're again looking at the notion of this comet striking and all of this, the amount of fresh water that ended up in the ocean essentially cut off some of the currents, the heating currents that we see today. This is a major cataclysmic event, and it is believed that the people at Gobekli Tepe actually carved from their view what had happened, and you can see this in the famous vulture stone, where we know that there's in the stone correlations with the night sky. This is around about 10,000 BC, something like that. But we know that there was a correlation, I think it's 10,096 or something bizarre like this. But there was a correlation between what's depicted on the stone and the constellations in the sky. And it is understood that perhaps that stone was carved as this major event took place. I can't really emphasize how drastic this event was. An equivalent amount of water ended up in the global ocean that wiped out an area the size of China and Europe combined. And in my view is perhaps the origin of the flood myths that we see around the world. I mean, you see it with Noah, you see it in the Aboriginal cultures of Australia. You see it with in Thailand, the countryside by the serpent who comes up from the sea. You see this absolutely everywhere, maybe even, and I promised that I would never use this word, but Atlantis, this great flood that comes around and washes away. We all have around the world this flood myth. And perhaps that's the answer, just within the collective memory. Excuse me. And this major event, this major melting event, is, of course, something that should resonate with us today, where, again, I'll just do a compare and contrast. The graph that is currently up on screen is showing the melting of or ice accumulation, I should say, in Greenland. And if we just compare that to today, we can see that there is a similar, if less drastic, reduction. And I just want to bring in Sean, because one thing that we've both been working on over the past year or so is developing a program to talk about what's going on with the environment. And I think there's a number of similarities to what was going on with the people of Gobekli Tepe, just in terms of the climate, with what we're going through today. And Sean, I don't know if you have any comments.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, it's important to highlight that whilst the Younger Dryas was an event out of our hands, this very much is also an event that is probably most people on the planet would want to sort of not be involved in, but we've put all our trust in capital, and that has led to this sort of excessive use of resources and very little thought to the space we live. Like, I know we've said it 100 times, James, on the courses. People talk about we're killing the planet. The planet will be fine. It's we're killing ourselves here. This is self-harm on a global scale. And sadly, it's very rarely people in the Western and global North countries who are the first to sort of experience this, and we're the ones who benefit from this extraction of wealth from the global South to the North, whilst they're simultaneously putting up with terrible working conditions and living conditions, also first in the front line of any sort of climate emergencies and disasters happening. We see flooding now regularly in the Pacific Islands, regularly in sort of Southeast Asia, South Asia. It's like hurricanes constantly in America. Like, it's even in the UK, we're seeing what used to be once in a century flood events happen every 3 to 5 years. And I know Rene opened the show saying that all this is quite controversial, which is interesting to me because I don't think outside of the United States it is that controversial. I think everywhere where we may not have 100% bought into the capitalist neoliberal free market system as a religion, we tend to be a bit more open-minded about the science. That doesn't mean to say there aren't people in the UK, in government here, making arguments that we shouldn't be. We should be ignoring this, but it's very different.
To be fair, what I was referring to in terms of controversy, although you're absolutely right, it is controversial here in the United States, which is ridiculous. But what I meant was the idea that this comet event caused this climate change. I guess that's the controversy.
I think Rene, though.
I think it's being more widely accepted now that had something to do with it, but
I think the bolides certainly for. I mean, if we just have a look at Gobekli Tepe generally with this, so once it's discovered, there's a resistance to accept its age. And the fact that, Gobekli Tepe means Potbelly Hill, and as evidence suggests, this thing was carved. This massive site was carved then covered up, then uncovered. Further work is then undertaken, then it's covered up again into this artificial sort of hill, this Potbelly Hill, which gave it its name. And there was a lot of pushback on the notion that, it's age. No, humans couldn't possibly have done this at the time. Evidence began to change people's minds, and it was only in 2018 that I'm not necessarily always impressed by peer review. It sort of echo chamber thought. But when you've got 43 climate scientists saying, no, we've looked at isotopic decay from core samples around the planet, and what we can see is there is a large concentration in Canada, North America, and Europe of this, like I say, probably two parts of this fragment causing this huge global flood and this change. I mean, it is absolutely catastrophic. I think just one last point on this, though, is the notion of the flood myths, for me, is interesting because it says that this was a very sudden and very extreme event. Hence the reason it's recorded. And I think where we differ today is, well, it's not happening as quickly as perhaps that event. So it's not really as serious because it's slower. We're going to see within our lifetime entire islands, we might as well call them Atlantis, entire nations underwater within the next 10 to 25 years. If that isn't a warning from history, I don't know what is. And I know that there is a great deal of skepticism in the United States around climate change, but usually that skepticism, and in the UK, I have to say, that skepticism is often born from oil companies who don't want to
exactly.
change their ways.
Well, what I was going to say was, to Sean's point about United States and this skepticism about climate change, it really wasn't always that way. In fact, the same group of people who now deny climate change were actually the ones that were, bigging it up, heralding this horrible event. And, I know Art Bell, who was a very, very, very successful and famous late night talk show host here in America and around the world. I was on his Facebook page one day, and he was sort of, putting down this, solar energy and all this kind of stuff. And I said, hey, Art, didn't you write a book about climate change? I mean, he wrote a book about, a sudden shift in the climate, and it was made into a major motion picture called The Day After Tomorrow. I believe it was Jake Gyllenhaal. But, of course, he didn't answer my comment, but I'm sure it wasn't very well received. But it's like there was this shift, and I guess it was because of the rhetoric that was going on, and the political rhetoric, and you're right, the big corporations, big oil. And what's so funny is that, we're so quick here in the United States to join in on conspiracy theories, but why aren't we, looking at the people that are really doing the damage, like big oil? That's a real conspiracy. So anyway, Sean, sorry I got off on a tangent.
No, I think as well. I mean, me and James look at on the course. There's a really good video called "The Story of Stuff," which talks about the amount of waste, and I think part of America's problem is it's bought into consumerism after sort of 1950s, 60s, 70s, and ramped up capitalism more and more. And it's to the point now where there's consumption going on a massive scale that is just unsustainable. And it's hard to sort of divorce yourself from that. It's almost an addiction. It
is.
And it's built into the system again. It's something we go into on the course. And it's hard weaning ourselves off that. But if we don't, the option is that there's mass displacement of people and struggling for resources, and then we see conflict start. And
this is exactly. I mean, you listeners will have heard me say this. You know, why be interested in history? Or people who strangely say, "Oh, I'm not interested in history." You're probably not interested because of the way you've been taught it. And if you truly don't like history, then you're doomed to make some catastrophic mistakes that we've all made before.
Those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it.
This is it. And just talking about the mass movements of people, humans don't really get to, and there might have been stragglers, and the dates are frequently changing. So if you're listening to this in 2025, if we're still around as a species, who knows? But if we are around and you're listening to this, the dates will probably have fluctuated. But really, coming from Turkey, it is believed and understood around about 44,000 BC. This is before the glacial maximums, the Ice Age, about 20,000 BC, something in this period. Humans move into Europe. And we're in a period long before, in fact, Gobekli Tepe. The reason I'm mentioning this, though, is we've had a traditional view that anyone prior to civilization, city dwellers, is primitive. We actually call them cavemen and cavewomen and things like this. Well, here's the problem with that. If you believe people lived in caves, imagine them, it's pitch black, and all of this. Got a torch, blow out the torch, dead caveman or woman. They are not living in darkness in caves. They are illuminating caves. And you'll find that littered across Europe from the period around about 40,000 BC onwards are these cave paintings. What we can say from that is humanity has had a very rich culture, but it came at a cost too, because Europe was inhabited by another hominid known as the Neanderthal, depending on where you're from. And they were displaced by us. And there were mass movements of people. And after the Ice Age, and we've got the Younger Dryas, this melting event, this flooding event, this refreezing event, and all of this, people were moving on a massive scale. Again, it comes down to the fact that if your food resources are limited, imagine you're living in a place called Doggerland. And this is, for those Brits who are listening, it's not what you're thinking. This is a bit of land that is off the coast of Yorkshire in eastern England. This is you can still take tours and see underwater forests. Imagine you're living there and you note that the sea level is rising to the point that your house is flooded, wherever you're living, your farmland's flooded, your animals have retreated. What do you do? Do you stay there in the hope that it'll get better, or do you move too? I suppose what I'm trying to say here is let's not think about the people who carved Gobekli Tepe and the other sites as being something primitive. What's primitive is our understanding of their society. We know that they didn't use money. We know that they didn't write their histories down, but we do know that they were extremely skilled and must have, over the generations, transferred those skills down in perhaps a system of organizing society that's totally different to us. I'll give you an example of this very quickly. And this is one of many of the 3D images found on these T-shaped totems that litter in a circular fashion around about 10 to 12 of these T-shaped totems in this in each sort of concentric ring, and there were estimated to be about 200 of these concentric rings. The carving knowledge and craftsmanship here is just astonishing, and that's why
it
I
really
think
is.
It's
amazing.
Why is Gobekli Tepe controversial? Because it's interrupted our agreed, well, not a history that I agree upon, but the textbooks. And
Right.
the problem with historians, it seems, is they don't like being told that they're wrong. Myself included, by the way.
It's true, but if we gain more information that informs us and informs what we really think, I mean, we should be able to change with new information that we receive. But it's I don't understand what's so controversial about it once there's physical evidence that's presented. Now, I'm wondering, and this is what I was wondering last night when I was thinking about the show and I was watching some videos and things, and I was wondering, what do we know, if anything, about like social structure that time, families? Is there any indications of how things were sort of set up? Were people married? Did people break off into couples and form families? Was it more of a group situation? Do we know anything about that?
There's nothing concrete. Marriage is an institution that comes a little bit later.
Well, much later, yeah.
It seems. It's an interesting site. No tools have been found.
No tools?
No. We know that they covered things up. Again, why?
Why did they cover it up? That was the question. Because they purposefully covered up the site, then uncovered it, and then covered it up again. Why?
Again, it's difficult to answer. My thoughts are that the site was clearly a place of significance, and remember, these are people who think like us. So if you ask yourself, well, why would you cover up this huge estate, really, of monuments? I mean, still only around about 5% has been uncovered. There's a hell of a lot more to go. Why would you cover something up? It could be because of the effects of flooding. It could very well be that after there's this dry period, this flooding event, and there's refreezing, and there's climate change, and the currents are being disrupted, and all of this, you do end up with some extreme weather events. It could very well be that they've covered it up to protect it. And I think that actually is the answer I would stick with for it, the protection of it.
That makes sense.
Now, whether that's due to climate or whether it's due to, I don't know,
attack
raiders,
or,
well, the other thing and the other problem that we've got is major warfare only begins when we start exchanging money. There's no examples of mass warfare in this period at all. Ritual sacrifice sometimes, but really it's not until we start writing things down. The origin of history is property. It's not until we start exchanging money that we pay soldiers to kill the other tribe or the other city. So I don't think it's warfare. I think it's some other protection, maybe. And here's the crucial thing that's sometimes missed: the age, the time between it being covered up and uncovered again is 1,000 years. There must have been an oral tradition that said there is something important down here. But,
or did they always know it?
Or perhaps they. Well, I suppose my bit of intrigue is what made them uncover it again.
Yeah.
Was
and
it?
then and then do some more work on it, and add to it. It's interesting.
Sean, have you got any thoughts? Why would you bury and uncover and then bury again?
I think it's a little bit problematic to say because it's different people, like you said, the time space between it being buried and then uncovered and buried again. They're completely different people. 1,000 years is a massive amount of time in culture. I mean, look at ourselves. 1,000 years ago, we were in the middle of the Dark Ages, split up into different parts, and it's all kingdoms and stuff. But I think, yeah, it's probably, as you suggest, it's probably more out of curiosity or an event happening and there's an oral tradition of some knowledge being there or something, and people go out and seek it. Or I know a lot of it's underground, isn't it? It was built underground as it was. Maybe it was a place that they felt they would be protected from something. I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of similarities to the totems on Easter Island. They do look, I'm not suggesting they look identical, but they do look very similar in this way. I mean, I can show you some of the totems. I mean, for me, they look phallic, and there's a tradition, certainly with Neolithic, megalithic, and even modern in today's period, of people using the phallus to really promote fertility and all of this. The origin, for example, of the maypole dances in Cornwall and things like this originate within fertility rituals. For me, this seems to be a language really that we don't understand. Clearly the depictions of animals and the location of these stones mean something. You don't just build this and keep it quiet. We might be looking at is some sort of school. Because clearly there's an educational quality to it. I would say this is a lecturer, but
yeah, that's what you're hoping it is. But gosh, it's quite amazing. Now, when as I said, I haven't done a lot of research on this subject in the past, and I know, gosh, when I had Robert Schock on, it has to be at least 10 years ago to talk about it. But when did people really start? Was there a discovery made? Was there? When did this current archaeological dig commence? And how did Gobekli Tepe come into the public consciousness, and when was that? Was that just about 10 years ago, or was it?
No, I mean, here's the thing. It was first discovered in 1963.
1963.
Which is quite a while ago. And, it's taken, I think I have to give absolute credit to Klaus Schmidt, Professor Klaus Schmidt. He really did put it on the map by talking openly. I mean, I suppose it's like this. You find something, and what you now have to do is find exceptional evidence. You have to be prepared to be ridiculed, when you start speaking about something that is older than, our history books tell us again, right? Well, humans left Africa. They began settling. They then learned how to cultivate grasses. They domesticated the dog, the chicken, cats domesticated us. True story, if you want to look that one up. Did all of this, and that's the way it worked. And cities, then Greece, Egypt, and Sumer, and that's the way it was. And not in any particular order, by the way, that. Then something comes along and says, right, well, look, we've discovered that perhaps this hill is actually artificial. Well, that's a big ask anyway, even today. If I would say, well, you see that hill that we've been climbing up for the past God knows how long, well, it might not be natural. Immediately, academia says put the tinfoil hat away and all of that. And that's one of the, it's a problem in society that is expanded. I can be critical for those people who are really just completely blind to evidence or led to deny something because they've been offered more money. The thing is, though, when you are faced with a reality, as difficult as it might be, that reality needs to be accepted. It's one of the reasons why I don't describe myself as an optimist or pessimist, just a realist. And sometimes that gets me into trouble, but usually it helps steer a course. And again, I just want to say in terms of courses, one of the reasons that we've developed in the trade union movement a knowledge of the environment and wanted to launch a environmental program is because it's not being done, and this is something that affects all of us. Multi-billionaires might want to go and escape to Mars and things like that, but the reality is we're here and we're not going elsewhere. And we should look at sites like Gobekli Tepe. We should look at, there are many other sites, Bimini Road maybe, lots of other sites that are now underwater due to climate change.
But, this idea that, it would be outlandish, to say, oh, look at that hill over there. I don't think that's natural. I mean, we have a lot of those sites here in America with the mounds, the Indian mounds that many have been excavated. And some of those are many, many thousands of years old. In Oklahoma, I grew up near the Spiro Indian mounds, which is a very well-known archaeological site in America. I think it was about 20 miles from my house. And they excavated all these mounds and found all kinds of amazing things. So it kind of makes you want to examine every hill that you see. It's like, well, does that look real, or could that be hiding something in there? I mean, it's like a repository of some kind, and I think they did, maybe it's for protection. I don't know.
I mean, we know that there is, humanity is incredibly fragile. We're exposed to the elements all the time. We started talking about the younger Dryas bolides, which I'm glad to say is becoming a more accepted theory than refuted. But we've in the 560s, 580s, there was a climatic event. There was no summers for a few years. That caused major problems and mass movement to people. There may have been in what's called the late Bronze Age collapse a climate event, although it's a little bit difficult and a lot of very interesting reasons where you see entire peoples move as if they're running away from something. You see it in what's called the Little Ice Age from the 1350s. What happened to the Norse in the eastern and western settlements of Greenland? They clearly moved somewhere, probably integrated with the Inuit and the Thule and Dorset cultures in North America. We all know of a very large event that shaped the climate, for example, at Vesuvius. You can see etched in stone Pompeii. You can see many others. In the Victorian period, you have volcanic explosions in Indonesia. We see the impacts of asteroids. We know about the dinosaurs. Some of their views are still around with us. We know about some of the other bolides. We've seen, if you go to Bayeux in northern France and have a look at the Bayeux tapestry, which depicts the invasion of Guillaume the Baptiste or William the Conqueror into England, you see a huge comet in the sky, Halley's Comet, probably. The impact that things in the sky has had on our psyche, it worries us. We've known about it for a while. We know about are we cursed because we've seen something in the sky? We have that deep knowledge that it's a dangerous place out there. I can't echo Sean's comments enough, though. The difference with us and the difference with people back then, we refer to them as primitive. Our society refers to the Native American peoples as somehow primitive because they didn't have a system of property ownership or anything like that. We call them primitive in Europe, the cavemen, the Neolithic people, because they don't have the air conditioning and TVs that we have today. We have a lot to learn from them. They reacted to climatic impacts, perhaps even going so far as to cover up a site. I wonder if when Gobekli Tepe was covered for that last time, whether the workforce, the people who were covering that up, knew that it wouldn't be till 1963 before their own species would see it again.
I wonder what they thought. But now, the bolides that you're referring to, the comets that hit during that period, were referred to as the Clovis comets. Do you know why that was?
Probably to do with the Clovis point, I would suggest. They have gone by many names. The fact that the only evidence of it is their debris around the planet. I'd probably rename them something, because I imagine for those who are looking at the night sky, you would have heard this impact, this airburst, for quite some distance. I mean, I would probably suggest even as far as Europe. This would have been probably the worst day in human history up until, like I say, the Ice Age. Since the Ice Age, I should say. But yeah, I would suggest they're called the Clovis comets because at the time you've got the Clovis point, which is the pointing of particular spears and cutting instruments that are found within North America and Europe, probably indicating some trade between the two continents as well. Should be noted. Much easier to walk over the continental ice shelf than it is to sail.
Right.
Well, I mean, I was just going to ask Sean. I mean, do you see any further comparisons between 10,000 BC and BCE and today?
I was just gonna say, actually, I think we've got to look. I mean, like you said, we have to understand our own history and learn lessons from that. And those people in that period clearly were able to react and sort of change with their environment. I wonder now if we're quite as ready. And also the difference is they're reacting to something that came out of nowhere. We've known about this. I mean, climate change and global warming and holes in the ozone have been talked about since I was a kid, 30 years ago, and we have still done nothing and just accelerated towards this. And if we don't learn from the people who came before us, then we absolutely are risking ourselves as a species And I mean, that's one of the things me and James talk about through these programs, is making sure once we do try and force these changes to improve the planet for everyone, that working people aren't left behind and aren't put out to pasture and left on the scrap heap, because it's so important. It will never work without workers buying them, and the people who produce the things, go to factories, drive your buses, your trains. They have to buy into the system, and they have to benefit from it. And if we don't have that, it will not work.
Absolutely. Hopefully, I'm just not sure what's going on here in America, but hopefully we'll take a tip from other countries on, preparing ourselves a little bit better.
It's interesting because the similarity that I have to the burying of Gobekli Tepe in today, other than we know that people have buried treasure troves and whatever else, but actually is perversely where the old Arctic ice sheet would have been, where we are now storing seeds underground. Maybe in the future people will wonder, why on earth did they do this? Who knows? Maybe
so. But you know what? That brings us right to the end of the hour. And so we're going to have to say goodbye for now. Sean, thank you so much for joining us. And James, of course, thank you as ever. But Sean, you'll have to come back soon.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure again, and thank you for the invite back again. It's absolutely incredible to spend the evening with you both.
Thank you so much. Morning for me, but
just for everyone listening, just note that there are people looking to shape the world so that we don't have to bury any more totems or anything like that, that we can all prosper.
And with that, we'll say goodbye. Good night, everybody.